Day 1263 of the Ukrainian War Map, also known as the Russo-Ukrainian War. Juzzie here, and today is another update as I take a simplified and down-to-earth approach to some of the most important happenings on the ground in Ukraine. So starting off, we'll take a look at those Russian losses, as currently Russia sits on more than 1,063,000 military personnel losses, representing an additional 1 tank, 4 APVs, a whopping 70 artillery, 4 multiple rocket launchers, another air defense system coming out of yesterday, and another oil refinery strike. So now to the map and to another heated weekend of activity courtesy of Ukraine's nocturnal birds. So starting out where Ukrainian UAVs tore into Russia's Saratov region overnight, striking the Saratov oil refinery, the key hub in Russia's eastern fuel network, with a processing capacity of 7 million tons annually. The overnight assault triggered multiple explosions and set the sprawling complex ablaze. With the fires still raging into mid-morning, the strike hit hydro-treating unit L24601, used for the final stages of the production of various fuel types, such as diesel, gasoline, and kerosene mixtures. Ukraine's general staff confirmed the operation, crediting the unmanned systems forces working in coordination with other defense units to disrupt Russia's military economic potential and cut its supply lines to its forces. Satellite heat mapping by NASA also registered a large thermal signature at the site, matching the scale of the reported blaze. Moscow says 8 drones were intercepted over Saratov in a broader wave of 121 downed nationwide, but concedes an industrial site was hit. But videos from residents leaves little doubt, showing the refinery's flames lighting up the night. It's the third strike on Saratov's oil refinery this year, and the most visible yet. By dawn, the smoke columns could still be seen for miles, making the target and the message impossible to hide. And all very well timed for a big, potentially big, political week for Ukraine and Russia. But then next, over the weekend, Bashkortostan shook again, specifically in Sterlita Mac, where one fresh blast ripped through the caustic plant of the Bashkir Soda Company, a major industrial complex known for producing soda ash, baking soda, PVC, caustic soda, and other chemical products, which sent smoke curling over the city, and a city that was scarred by the previous day's explosion mishap at the very same site. Whether this was a repeat of sloppy industrial practice or something more deliberate, the result is the same. 2 consecutive nights of explosions at the key eastern chemical hub. Official word points to industrial mishap, but in a region where drones are already torching oil and chemical sites, trust is in short supply. Even less so when considering this case of lightning striking twice. Then on the map and nearby, because as if Bashkortostan and Saratov weren't enough, we then saw events take place at Tartarstan, with a bit of what you could call drone-on-drone activity, though not in the conventional sense that we're used to, as Ukraine's security service sent more drones to smash a Shahed production and storage hub in the region, igniting a fire at the facility holding both completed Shaheds and foreign-sourced components for their assembly. Footage released by the SBU shows the moment of impact inside a workshop, confirming the strike on Russia's largest drone factory. Kyiv cast the operation as part of its ongoing campaign to dismantle Russia's capacity for nightly Shahed attacks on Ukrainian cities, and for an event that unfolded not long after. Ukrainian President Zelensky rejected a new Kremlin ceasefire offer, with Zelensky insisting no Ukrainian territory will be surrendered. Now to the main map, or just a hair past it, beyond the border into Bryansk, where a Ukrainian sabotage and reconnaissance group of 15 to 25 men strong briefly drew Russian border troops into a clash on their own turf. The incursion likely tested response times and surveillance coverage, yielding intelligence on Russian patrol patterns for weak points in their defensive lines, and the readiness, or lack thereof, of units stationed in this sector. Perhaps we'll see a new opening front right here in Bryansk. Now to Sumy, where the AFU have reclaimed Beselivka, a village pressed right up against the Russian border adjacent to Tyotkino, with Ukrainian forces now sweeping the village clear of the last occupiers. The counterstrike, led by the 33rd Airborne Regiment with the 24th Airborne Battalion, is reported to have left 18 invaders eliminated and another 20 or more, in fact, wounded just before the Trident was raised. Next up, and briefly to the Kupiansk sector, where Ukrainian units have swept the forest belts north of the town, cleaning out Russian troops, dismantling a key layer of the enemy's forward defense. Though, despite this latest local success, the broader frontline positions here surely remain fluid, but for now, Ukrainian defenders are holding firm. But any breakthrough along those riverine flanks by Russian forces could expose approaches to Kupiansk and amplify risk for further zones into Kharkiv, then on the map and down to Donetsk, and further beyond for that matter, to the newly unfolding dynamic of Putin dangling a so-called ceasefire. If only the AFU would kindly abandon every last occupied stretch of Luhansk, Donetsk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson that Moscow now stamps as its own. On the map, you'll see Ukraine's complex network of fortifications, with many still unlisted, and altogether being the most defensible positions Ukraine holds against the invader, something that has become extremely difficult of a proposition for Moscow to take militarily, which has already been unimaginably costly for them. Even so, Putin comes along announcing that his troops will perform a ceasefire immediately the moment Ukrainian forces withdraw from those territories, which is, when you think about it, better called a free pass for Russia to advance and soak up another, this is 21 to 22,000 square kilometers of Ukrainian land uncontested, only to later break the ceasefire, if Russia's own history is anything to go by, therefore become much better positioned to devour the remainder of Ukraine. Now, of particular note here, and let's not forget, a ceasefire by definition is just that, no shots fired, as part of the suspension of active hostilities by opposing sides, where the front lines are locked in as they are the moment the ceasefire takes effect, precisely to prevent any one side from exploiting the pause to grab more territory. So what Putin is floating here is not a conventional ceasefire at all, but rather effectively being a surrender of territory as a precondition. It actually doesn't make any logical sense, and the Putin offered deal gets worse than that, but I'll swing back to all of that in just a moment. So back to the map, where somewhere in Donetsk, we saw the case of Russians who mined a bridge, but things didn't go as planned. Operators of Ukraine's 3rd Heavy Mechanized Brigade used an FPV drone to hit the bridge used by the occupiers to move troops and equipment, resulting in the blast that set off their own TM62 mines, wedged in there by a combination of screws and scotch tape, possibly there for some time. Then also somewhere along the front lines, where a Ukrainian fiber optic guided FPV drone was seen sliding between forest trunks, which is where a Russian Buhunga van with infantry came into view, with the FPV closing in and striking cleanly on target. Then in the Lerman forested direction of Donetsk, and for what looks to be the same situation, but was an unrelated separate event, as pilots from the AFU's 53rd Mechanized Brigade were using drones to disrupt enemy movements. And you'll also notice a different marking on each of the vans, painted in the same military olive drab green camouflage. Also on display was the second loaf that had 3 drone jammers right on top, failing to perform as intended. Then also on the map, and coming out of the Sumy region, Ukrainian forces have logged the first confirmed destruction of a 140mm towed mortar of North Korean make in Russian service, marking its combat debut with an abrupt end. But then, just alongside it, precision strikes from Ukraine's FPVs also took out 2 North Korean 107mm Type 75 multiple launch rocket systems, stripping the occupied occupiers of another imported tool in their dwindling arsenal. Now, as for this platform, in fact, both of these platforms might achieve a range of up to 7 or 8 kilometers if they're lucky. They're quite old, about a half a century, so it comes as a range that could have been more handy for Russia to operate at the beginning of the war, but with Ukrainian drones now threading in well past that reach, the advantage is gone before it's even fired, so what might once have offered the occupiers a standoff edge is now little more than costly North Korean scrap metal. And then on the map, and as for multiple launch rocket systems, the next incident where Ukrainian Marines have spectacularly destroyed a more traditional Russian BM-21 Grad launcher, wiping it off the map almost literally. It was clearly loaded, and just look at that. Have you ever seen fire so red? Now to the news, where Washington is now actively weighing whether to bring Zelensky into the August 15 Alaska talks, where Trump and Putin are set to meet, reportedly, with some optimism floating that such a three-way summit could materialize. But the core positions of the two parties at war haven't shifted an inch, and that's the problem. So Kyiv has flatly rejected any deal involving the surrender of Ukrainian territory, with Zelensky stressing that Ukraine must be an equal party in any negotiation, not an afterthought. European leaders, meanwhile, are locking in behind Ukraine's stance, tabling a counteroffer that demands a verified, comprehensive ceasefire before even touching territorial questions, and pairing any future concessions with security guarantees, including the possibility of NATO membership. The Kremlin's line is still one of a Ukrainian pullout from Russian-claimed areas in a territorial exchange that amounts to, reportedly, not even a ceasefire, but a partial ceasefire. And if that's truly the case, then that's pretty serious stuff, because, so imagine this. Imagine being given a deal to give up your territory, some of your territory, not even a full ceasefire, and one that actually benefits your adversary, because in this case, it specifically involves a stop to strikes on Russian energy assets. That's what the partial ceasefire would be all about. So Russia takes a huge swath of Ukrainian land, only offers a partial ceasefire, and doesn't get their energy assets struck. It just repositions the invading army on their own terms. Now, even if Alaska does see all three leaders in the same room, there's little chance of bridging that gap. But for Putin, just showing up could buy the pause he wants long enough to stall Ukraine's upcoming ballistic missile threat and rollout, blunting those risks deep within Russian soil. Ukraine would likely be open to the suggestion of creating a full ceasefire at the current lines of contact, of course heavily contrasting with what looks to be Putin's offer for a partial ceasefire, taking more land, and having their own strategic assets protected all in the meanwhile. I mean, I just can't get over this. It sounds ridiculous just even saying it. So that has to be it for today, guys. Thanks again for watching. Please continue to like, comment, subscribe, and I do hope to see all of you guys there in the next one. Cheers!